Russia that pretends that it cares for the world food security, well, it doesn't. It really doesn't. The biggest port that we have, the Odessa port, is being bombarded every night right now. This is an extremely dangerous situation which does threaten the global food security. Well, the losses are very difficult to calculate because the numbers are unfortunately changing every day. If we spoke to you yesterday, the losses would be 1, but we are talking today after another nightly attack in Odessa, in which 1 person was killed, the person who was working in the port terminal, and the numbers are again growing. So unfortunately, those attacks continue. They specifically attack the port infrastructure. They attack the warehouses where grain is being held. It's very difficult to calculate the exact losses, but it's very clear what the targets are. They're destroying Ukrainian grain, which was meant to be transported to other countries that Ukraine trade great with. So the port of Odessa is the biggest port that Ukraine has been using for transporting grain from Ukraine to the world. If this port is not functioning, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for us to export all the grain that we have produced. The grain that we have produced despite the war, despite our fields being constantly under attack, we have still done that. But unfortunately, we cannot simply export it because the biggest port that we have, the Odessa port, is being bombarded every night right now. So it's a critically important port. We hardly have any access to any other ports that we used to have on the Black Sea. So if this port is completely destroyed, well, we might potentially use some smaller ports, but truly our export capacity will diminish twice at least. Ukraine is one of the biggest producers of grain in the world. And of course, our capacity to produce food and to produce grain specifically, but then also other types of food, is diminished because of the war. With about 30% of our land that we used for growing food is now under Russian control. Then there are big portions of our lands which are under Ukraine's control, but which have been mined from by Russia. So this is already a great danger and a great percentage of food that we could have produced, that we did produce before. We simply cannot produce it right now because of the war. But these attacks on the port, they diminish our capacity to provide food to the world even more. Because the reality is this, that first they destroy the infrastructure itself, so it's simply impossible to use the ports. But secondly, most importantly, is they do not guarantee security for the ships that are planning to travel to Odessa and to take the grain which we still produce and which we are still able to load on the ships. So the question is, will the ships be willing to come to Odessa if there are constant threats of attacks? If port is being attacked, will the ships be willing to come to the docks and to try to get the grain from the port itself? So this is an extremely dangerous situation which does threaten the global food security to a very big extent. And Russia that pretends that it cares for the world food security, well, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And I think there are 2 reasons for that, why they don't care and why they specifically destroy the port infrastructure in Odessa. 1, because they, of course, being an empire that they are, they want to destroy Ukraine as an independent state and to take back it as a colony as it used to be. But secondly, there are also business interests here. Russia wants to have shortages on the grain food market. It is also a big grain producer. So the less grain Ukraine can produce, the more money will Russia be able to make. So there is this economic element to that as well. And I think that the world should remember that the price for food that will be growing, the reason for that is 1, and that is Russia. Russia is doing everything in its power to destabilize the food security in the world. And it's doing it by attacking Ukraine and specifically by attacking our port infrastructure in Odessa.